So this is these are two questions from section 3.8. And the first question, question number 1, we are going to find out that lambda is equal to 0 is not an eigenvalue. But then the second question, we are going to see that lambda equal to 0 is an eigenvalue. So I'm just going to say that if lambda is equal to 0, then we are going to have y double prime plus 0y is equal to 0. But then 0 times y is going to be 0. So then we get y double prime is equal to 0. If y double prime is equal to 0, then if I find the derivative of this, I get y prime is equal to, let's say, b, because derivative of a constant b is a constant. Derivative of b is going to be 0. So then if I take the derivative of this again, I get y is equal to bx plus some constant c, right? So I found the integral of y double prime. I got y prime is equal to b, integral of y prime, and then finding the integral of b with respect to x. This is what we find out. Now I use the initial condition. I have y prime at 0 is 0. So I'm going to go to this one. If y prime at 0 is equal to 0, then that implies b has to be 0. And then I have this condition that says y of 1 is equal to 0. So I'm going to substitute 1 for x. That gives me y is equal to b times 1 plus c is equal to 0. Is equal to 0. But then b is equal to 0. So this is going to be 0. So I get y is equal to, or y is 0, so I'm not going to write it. So I have 0 plus c is equal to 0. Then I get c is equal to 0. So I have c is 0 and b is 0. So that is when we have the trivial solution. So then we say lambda is equal to 0 is not an eigenvalue because we get a trivial solution. We just get y is equal to 0. But look at the second situation, second problem. So if lambda is equal to 0, we get y double prime is equal to 0. We find the integral of both sides. We get y prime is equal to b. We find the integral of both sides. We find y is equal to bx plus c. Look at the initial conditions. For this initial condition, I have y prime of negative pi is equal to 0. So that's fine. So that means b must be 0. I also have the same for this one. I have y prime of pi is equal to 0. So that is fine. Again, if y prime of pi is 0 and y prime is equal to b, that implies that b must be 0. But then if I substitute 0 here, I get 0x plus c, then y is equal to c. So then c is a constant. So for instance, c is equal to 1, c is equal to 1, that's also a constant. So that's why you say when lambda is equal to 0, then y is equal to 1, for instance, is a solution, or y is equal to 2 is a solution. So in my lab math, they're using y is equal to 1, just one particular example. So that is why lambda here is not, y is not a trivial solution, whereas here y is equal to 0 is a trivial solution.